Those in the public gallery and those watching the live stream. Before we begin, in the event of the evacuation alarm sounding, everyone should vacate the building through the nearest exit and proceed directly to the assembly point. Have all the cabinet members have access to the agenda, please? Yeah? Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. None from members. We have had apologies from John Gregg from CLT.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest on today's items? No? Minutes of the meeting held on 15th of January 2024. Are the minutes agreed as a true and accurate record? Do we need to propose it in second?
You can. I'll just get
Yeah, are they agreed? Yeah, okay, thank you. Petitions to the Cabinet. Are there any petitions to be presented to the Cabinet? Dale? Yeah, can we, if you come to John Fox here, next to John Fox.
Next to me, mate.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed from the agenda today that the petition that I presented at full council has not been brought to today's Cabinet meeting. Yet the motion to the petition I put at full council, last full council meeting, was to bring it here. Did you want me to read out this petition now?
I think we could have our legal officer should be able to answer that question without reading the petition, or would you like the petition to be read?
Thank you, Leader. I don't see any harm with the petition being read out, just for clarification to ensure that everybody has had, all members are clear as to that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This petition was for 1,517 signatures that have been verified by the council officers on the 9th of January. Within a week of starting it, it had 648 verified, hence being here today, and that was at the full council. It states, we call on the council to not close our youth centre building and to use the grants available from the government's 75 million fund for youth clubs and buildings renovation to upgrade the building in time for the council's reopening of Senior Youth Club by 2025. And for the continuation of our current Junior Youth Club Brownies, Rainbows and Girl Guides, and the use of the building along with the library.
Thank you, Dale. From top of my head, I think one of the reasons is that we are still working on this, our youth centre, and it's still in progress. No decision has been made, but I'll pass on to the legal officer to come back on that.
Thank you, Leader. I do wonder, obviously, the petition is in the context of the locality asset review, which is an agenda item, and I do wonder whether, if you're minded to include that as part of the discussion on the locality assets and thoughts about that, because they are all linked together. So maybe to reorder that item to link it with the particular item.
Thank you. So Dale, we're going to discuss that with item 8, I think, with the locality review.
Yeah, and I think that was also the context in which the referral was made from full council, so it could be discussed in the context of the wider review.
Thank you. So now we move on to the council business, which is strategic decisions, item 5. Approval on spend via Cambridgeshire County Council's dynamic purchasing system, known as DPS, for home and community support services. Cabinet Member Councillor Saqib, would you like to present that, please?
Thank you, Leader. Home care is considered to be any care and support that a person might require in their own home, including preparing meals, taking medication, and attending their personal care needs. This can include 24-hour live-in care where this is assessed. Peterborough City Council currently has a closed framework arrangement for commissioning home care, which is due to end on the 2nd of March 2024. The Council also utilises Cambridgeshire County Council's dynamic purchasing system for home and community support services as an alternative way to meet the assessed needs of a service user when the existing closed framework of providers is unable to meet demand. Cambridgeshire County Council's DPS is due to end on 31st of October 2027. It is anticipated that from March 25, the commissioning of a comprehensive model in Peterborough to meet the needs of all residents will significantly reduce the need to use CCC's DPS going forward. Therefore, from March 2025, once the new service is live, new packages of care will cease to be commissioned via CCC's DPS, except in exceptional circumstances. Any care package already commissioned via this DPS will remain in place until the end of its agreement. Cabinet is asked today to approve the estimated spend of £11,672,606 via CCC's DPS until 31st of October 2027 to allow commissioners the flexibility to end packages of care under CCC's DPS at the pace of people drawing on support. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Is there any questions from Cabinet members? No questions. So do we agree with the recommendation, which is authorise the continuation of method of procuring and future predicted spend of up to £11,672 and £606 by procuring care at home support for Peterborough City Council clients via Cambridgeshire County Council's DPS for home and community support services from 2nd of March 2024 through to 31st October 2027 as an alternative way to meet the assessed needs of a service user when the existing closed framework of providers is unable to meet the demand. So this basically gives us an access to wider pool of resources and wider carers where Peterborough will have wider access and more accessibility to carers. So do we agree with that? Agree with that recommendation? Thank you. Thank you very much. Item 6, award of pseudo-dynamic purchasing system, known as PDPS, agreement for supported accommodation service for young people in care, aged 16 to 18, and for separated migrant children and or formerly separated migrant children with no recourse to public funds. Cabinet Member, Councillor Bisbee, would you like to present that, please?
Thank you, Leader. Peterborough City Council are commissioning supported accommodation services for young people in care aged 16 to 17 years for whom the authority has a statutory responsibility as corporate parent, in line with the new Ofsted requirements and regulations of the sector. Supported accommodation services enable young people to prepare for independent living, utilising support rather than care, to aid young people to achieve positive outcomes and successfully transition into adulthood. A commissioning exercise has been undertaken, resulting in a recommendation for Cabinet to award a pseudo-dynamic purchasing system for supported accommodation services for young people in care. This commissioning activity has been informed by Peterborough City Council's sufficiency statement alongside consultation and engagement with care-experienced young people. This report recommends awarding the PDPS to 13 providers under Lot 1 and 8 providers under Lot 2. The PDPS agreement will commence on the 1st of April 2024 and run for an initial period of 2 years, with an option to extend twice in increments of 12 months, with a total contract value for the life of the contract of £16 million. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Bisbee. Was there any questions on this particular statutory requirement? Councillor Howard.
Thank you. And through you, Chair. Yeah, my question was just to check, does this give a better standard of care than we're providing already with this new contract, or is it just an extension of what's already a good provision? If you don't mind, just to ask that.
I believe it does, but if Sam or Helen would like to take the answer.
Hello, Helen Carr, Head of Children's Commissioning. This is a PDPS specifically for Peterborough. Currently, we are under a shared arrangement with Cambridgeshire. This enables us to have build our strategic provider base and our relations with those providers, and also to attract new providers into Peterborough. Part of the requirements of this commissioning activity was to ensure that we had providers that could offer services within a 20-mile radius of Peterborough, so that we're concentrating, building quality provision and support for our young people in their locality.
Thank you. Thank you. Is that okay, Councillor Habib? Thank you very much. Thank you. So if there's no further question on that item, sorry, Councillor Elsey, my apologies.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Can I just ask, I'm sure the answer is yes, but we're looking to procure these services for 16 to 18-year-olds. Traditionally, care for 18 plus youngsters is significantly less than it is for the 16 to 18-year-old bracket. So have we got a robust system to make sure that when we are providing care for these people, that they are being provisioned for independent living going forward, and that as a continuation of this, that the care and support is there for them? Thank you.
Yes, the care is there for them. The system is set up to ensure that these young people, it's rather than going out completely on your own, it's a bit like a step up from care, so that you learn about business, how to pay your bills, etc. But if Sam wants to come back, or
Helen, did you want to come back on that? Sorry.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it's supporting our young people and our care leavers for independence. It's supporting them to be able to hold tenancies successfully. It's supporting move into social housing where that's appropriate. And of course, for our separated migrant young people that have no recourse to public funds, we continue to support post-18 until such time as their asylum status is granted or otherwise.
Thank you. Was that okay, Councillor Elsey? Yeah. If there's no further questions, there are 4 recommendations on this. It is recommended that Cabinet approves the award of the PDPS to each of the successful bidders who tendered for the PDPS for supported accommodation services for young people in care aged 16 to 18, and for separated migrant children and or formerly separated migrant children with no recourse to public funds. The PDPS agreement will commence on 1st of April 2024 and run for an initial period of 2 years, with the option to extend twice in increments of 12 months, with a total contract value of £16 million over a 4-year contract period. The list of approved providers is outlined in Appendix 1. Recommendation 2 is delegates approval to the Executive Director of Adult Social Care and Commissioning to extend the contract term up to 2 years times 2 periods of 12 months in accordance with the contract provisions. Number 3, delegates approval to the Executive Director of Adult Social Care and Commissioning to agree fee uplifts per annum on the hourly rate and weekly co-accommodation costs, subject to internal governance arrangements and the value given in the published contract notice. And finally, delegates approval to the Executive Director of Adult Social Care and Commissioning for future awards to successful bidders to join the PDPS as and when the PDPS has been reopened throughout the duration of contract term within the contract provisions. Now we move on to item 7, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Falls Prevention Strategy. Councillor Saqib Farooq, would you present it, please? Oh, sorry. Do we agree with those recommendations? Agreed. Thank you. Thank you. We move on to item 7. Sorry, I'm not.
Thank you, Leader. The Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Falls Prevention Strategy is being brought to Cabinet for endorsement of Peterborough City Council's role within the system-wide strategy. The report provides an overview of the new Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Falls Prevention Strategy 23 to 2026 and the role of Peterborough Council in supporting the provision of clear strategic direction to prevent falls and falls-related injuries across the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough integrated care system. Leader and fellow Cabinet members, I urge you all to consider the item and the excellent system-wide strategy and the benefits that it could bring to our elderly residents of our city, as well as support our administration's role to protect our vulnerable as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions on that? No questions on that. Clearly, it was well discussed at the Cabinet Policy Forum and at the CLT, so thank you. So in that case, we'll move on to recommendation. It is recommended that Cabinet endorse Peterborough City Council's role within the system-wide Cambridgeshire and Peterborough falls prevention strategy. Do we agree on that recommendation? Thank you. Now we move on to item 8, which is locality assets review update. Councillor, Cabinet Member and Councillor John Howard to present that, and over to you, Councillor Howard.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Cabinet approved the localities asset review in November 2023, and at the time, the Cabinet paper included an exempt annex of 28 assets under consideration in Phase 1. Since Cabinet approval, officers have engaged with the operators and users of the sites and, with the support of members, attended numerous public and private meetings. This has enabled officers to start to draw conclusions and make recommendations. Following the necessary engagement, details of the sites, along with the initial proposals, is now set out in the full report. Some of the sites listed will, of course, require more time to consider options and proposals and make clear recommendations. On this basis, officers are proposing to provide Cabinet quarterly updates and will also provide monthly updates to members on the progress being made. In addition, officers are recommended that Phase 2 of the review focuses on schools and other education sites. The rationale behind recommending Phase 2 focusing on schools and education sites is set out in the subsequent report today. And as a point of clarity, the Council are in discussions with DCMS to discuss Peterborough's library service provision. DCMS are the inspectorate for libraries, and their approval and/or agreement is not needed to make the proposed changes. However, DCMS are engaged and will support on the ongoing consultation process and timescales, but they are not a decision maker in the process. And Leader, I know you're often challenged on what the Peterborough First-led administration are doing differently, and I feel the approach to the assets review has been done differently. This report is in line with the new administration's core value of transparency, and I've put forward the suggestion that we look into the employment of a grant finder to help support community groups to ensure they are getting access to grants that are suitable. Again, this comes forward under this new administration. If I may finish by offering my heartfelt thanks to the property team, who have been under considerable strain during this review, and the report today is a credit to their hard work and to our joint desire to ensure the Council's assets are efficient and serving our communities in the best way possible. Thank you, Chair. Over to any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Howard, for a great presentation. And yeah, we extend that thank you to Dale, particularly back at there, and all the community groups in all different areas where the community centres have become their lifeline, participating with yourself, with the property team, to ensure that their use is maximised. So we open to questions. And in view of the petition, of large numbers, shall we talk about our youth centre first? Would you like to respond to that earlier, Dale's presentation?
Yeah, of course, Leader. And sorry, I've still got the mic on. Yeah, of course, Leader. Yeah, very, the progress we've made so far, we're very happy with. It's a very open dialogue. It's a very open discussion. And the officers have worked very hard on looking at different provisions, different options, all the while considering all the options on the table. And that's why the paper is quite upfront today in saying that there is still decisions and discussions to be made. And Dale will be engaged all the way along those discussions, as he has been already. We'll continue to do that because our interests is, we want what's best for the eye community. And in doing so, we also have to make sure we're efficient with the assets and we're making the right choices for the future as well. But all those things will be balanced, and that engagement, I can promise, will continue.
Thank you, thank you. And every small step progress you make on that, our youth centre keep Dale involved in that, so that he adds very, very much valuable advice into that input. Any other questions? Councillor Elsey?
Thank you, Chair. It's not really a question. It's a show of support, really, for Dale, in as much as I represent a rural ward who has seen significant growth in the last few years, and the infrastructure for certainly teenagers just isn't in the ward. And so I completely sympathise with having a rural ward that is so dependent on a well-run and emotionally supported facility such as the one that Dale and his wife run to such a high standard. So I would urge that we do look at it very, very seriously, because to take that kind of service away from certainly teenagers, but youngsters of all ages in a rural setting can be really crippling and debilitating to the community. So I would just urge that we move forward with extreme caution when we're looking at this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Elsey, and I always admire your great passion for the rural wards, and I congratulate you particularly, and Dale will be happy to hear these news, is you're passionate about connectivity. Not only that you've got bus connectivity going through the number of villages on the west side, which is Castor, Aylesworth, Wansford, Wittering and Stamford, but you have now negotiated an increased frequency towards Thorney side, so there will be good news coming on that side. So thank you for that. Connectivity plays just as critical role as does the local community centres in taking away the isolations and the well-being. Adesir, you wanted to make some comments on that? Sorry, you wanted to come in previously? Did you put your hand up? No, you didn't.
I was just going to mention, just going back to the I petition, that there were obviously two elements of that petition. First of all, a decision needed on the request to keep the centre open, but there was also another element in relation to grant funding opportunities, and I wonder whether part of the discussions and ongoing discussions will be a review into those elements to see whether those grant funding opportunities are available. I'm just mentioning it because I know that at full council it was referenced that we would consider, members would consider all elements of it, but that particular part about the grant funding opportunities, whether that will be part of the discussions ongoing.
Thank you. Perhaps Adrian would you like, do we have any grant funding available at the moment, or has officers had a chance to look at anything? Is there any avenue of bringing some income in for these youth centres?
Councillor Howard mentioned a conversation that he and I and a couple of others have had around identifying some capacity to help with grant funding for community organisations. This is something that Dale mentioned in full council. The youth services per se don't sit within my directorate, they sit in children's services. So I think we need to take an offline conversation forward with the director and pursue specific youth-related grant funding opportunities. And then I'll update Cabinet in due course on the more generic grant funding, self-funded post that we're trying to identify.
Thank you, Adrian. I also know that Councillor Sanford wanted to make some comments about another site which is still in progress, and we're still working with all the users of it, which is Paston Farm. Sorry, before I come in, I think Councillor Howard wanted to make a comment. Did you want to come in earlier, or was that my...
No, I think Adrian covered it very well, so I'm happy.
Yeah, definitely. Before I come back to you, Councillor Sanford, Dale wants to come in. We're still discussing youth centre. So Dale, please come along. We should have really given you a mic over there, but...
So I thank the officer because she's just raised one of the important points, and that is that the petition is split into a number of parts. The key part being the government has got all of this money, 500 million, available for senior youth services. We have all the juniors sorted with voluntary work, but the government have got this 500 million, a couple of hundred million has been spent, and there's more to come in various ways. So I've already asked our MP about when is phase 3 of the Youth Investment Service going to be coming along, and he's doing some work on that. But the Youth Investment Services covers a number of aspects, one being senior youth club provision, as in resources, but 2, in terms of renovation or even building of new buildings. So therefore, this report today from the officers, and I have had some good engagement with the officers and councillors and leaders, but this report today only talks about one aspect, and that is to move from the youth centre where it is, which is a historic building in a conservation area, to a new building. But plan A should be the government grants, renovate that historic building, keep it for the use of the village, use it for the current use and for senior youth club provision, which the council has a strategic requirement to have by 2025. So you've got the facility, it's well established, as I've already said, and the other part of it is this petition is for that, to get the funding when it's available, invest in that building as plan A. If not, then obviously there's covenants and all sorts that come into this about the building as it currently is. If not, move to plan B, which is a movement. The other point that was mentioned was the grant funder. It's great, like the sound of it, because looking at this, I found loads of grants that the council could have applied for across the board in terms of its responsibilities. So a grant funder is great, but I am concerned with the statement for community groups. So our community groups in for this building don't have the bandwidth to start applying for grants all over to get senior youth club provision in the village. But these grants are available to the council. So therefore, the grant provided for me should be the council grants applications for millions of pounds. And just finally, well, there's 2 points. In September 2023, £1 million was announced. 800,000 of that funding was to support 500 youth workers. One, have we applied for that? And when I say youth worker, I meant youth worker training for levels 2, 3 and 4 training. So 1, have we applied for that grant? And 2, another 200, so that was 800,000. 2, another 200,000 was available to local councils to apply for a grant to do peer reviews with other councils. And there's just been 44 councils that have done this work on youth service provision. So another £200,000 to do peer review with another council or councils as to what is the best approach. There's all sorts of support groups and government funded support areas to help the council in all of this as well. And I suppose my last question is youth club provision by 2020, senior youth club provision by 2025 in this year's budget?
Thank you, Dale. Did you want to come back on some of those points, Councillor?
And so, yeah, absolutely take your points on board about the opportunities for grants. We're excited by it, and it'd be great to get someone in the post who can sort of explore that fully with you, with our support along the way, obviously.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. And absolutely, just to reiterate that, moving would definitely become Plan B. Plan A would be, if we have the funding, if we have grants available, we would do it up, and we will not hesitate even for a minute. Any further questions on? Sorry, Councillor Sanford, did you want to come in on Paston Farm?
Yes, thank you. I should add at the beginning that I am speaking in my capacity as a ward councillor. I do wear a number of hats, so I just want to make it clear which hat I'm wearing on this particular occasion. But I do just want to initially mention a couple of more generic points. I do endorse what Councillor Howard said, that I think it is really refreshing that not refreshing that this process is happening, but the fact that it's happening in public. Because I think it did certainly put me as a ward councillor in quite an awkward situation when all this was in exempt reports and I couldn't really have conversations with members of the public. And so I think having it all out in the open is a much healthier situation. I'd also endorse his comments about the hard work being put in by the property team, and I've certainly always found them really approachable. So I do have one slight quibble, though, in that the capacity that I'm speaking is under paragraph 11.5 of the executive procedure rules, which says that any ward councillor may come along to the cabinet and speak if something affects their ward. But that paragraph also says that if there's an item on the agenda that affects a particular councillor's ward, that those councillors should be notified. And I'm not aware that all of the councillors that have got community centres that are impacted by this have actually been informed. So I'm not going to make a large issue out of that, but could you just be careful of that going forward? So I just want to make some comments about the two sites that fall in Paston and Walton, and I'll just deal with probably the least controversial one first. Which is the Walton Community Centre. Now, you've been asked to approve the disposal of that and the possibility of disposing of it to an education provider. Now, I'm not averse to that, but I am conscious that it does at the moment provide the only community facility in that part of the ward. So I just wanted to draw to your attention a recommendation that came from the discussion at the Growth and Scrutiny Committee, and I'm slightly concerned that you don't appear to have been notified of that the committee agreed the officer recommendations in respect to Walton Community Centre, but they specifically put a recommendation forward that if the site is disposed of to an education provider, that the education provider be asked if during the sort of evening period the facility could be made available for continued community use. So I'd be grateful in the recommendations that the Cabinet takes forward if that could be included. This particular community centre is underutilised at the moment. There's only about 3 or 4 groups actually use it. So I think I just want some assurance really that those groups that are needing a community facility in that area can continue to have it. So moving on to Paston Farm, which is probably the more controversial one, and the recommendation that you've got is that the review's ongoing. Paston Farm is actually is one of the most socially deprived areas of Peterborough. It really forms the heart and soul of our ward. It provides 2 major features. It has a community cafe that is open Monday to Friday, providing hot meals to local people at a reasonable cost. It also provides a community fridge, which enables those who are facing issues of food insecurity to come along and actually obtain some food. So I think those facilities are important. Now, I am actually engaging with the actual officers, and it could be that that some alternative location could be I'm actually arranging a meeting for the 3 ward councillors to meet with the trustees of Paston Farm so that we can have a conversation with them. There's been a whole series of ongoing issues, and I think it's fair to say that the relationship between the trustees of Paston Farm and the council hasn't been particularly healthy, so we need to try and restore that. So I'm actually grateful for the fact that we're not taking this forward quickly, that there's going to be a period of consideration. But what I'd really like to urge on the Cabinet, on behalf of the people in that particular area, please, whatever you do, if you can't preserve Paston Farm itself, please can you ensure that the really crucial services that it provides are able to continue.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford. And that's something we could unequivocally say, is that we are going to be talking to every single user group, and we will not make them homeless without either providing an alternative or either repurposing their building there. Coming back to your earlier about the Walton Community Centre, I suppose the disposal is the wrong word there. What we are really doing is passing on to the education outlet or a school, and they would, just like other schools, I play badminton at Jack Hunt School, for instance, in the evenings, and schools open up to community groups to do what they have to do, whether they're badminton clubs or boxing or whatever. So they will provide, and we expect them to provide those same community facilities there, or continue to do so. Councillor Howard, did you want to add anything to that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Leader. To be fair, I know we visited Paston Farm, and I can see the importance of the building and what it provides for the community. And I think part of the review, and there's a very common thread that goes through the whole report, is that when we're looking at these buildings, we're also looking at what contribution they're making to the community and the how. And I think as part of the review that we're doing, to be fair, the importance is to keep those community provisions where we can, as best we can. And as you rightly say, whether that's in that building or in a different building, but the fundamental point is we are looking to protect the provisions that are being made in these buildings, because they are so important to the local communities. So you've got a fan, and any excuse to come back and use the cafe is good in my book, so there could be a second visit from me as an informal basis. But yeah, absolutely, we are fully behind supporting the provision that's there. And yeah, a really good point about Walton as well, actually. So I'm sure we can take that forward in the recommendations, because that does make perfect sense. And it's a shame it's not in the paper, but we will certainly follow that up and make sure that we deal with that.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Yeah, so many of those projects are being worked on, right solutions being found for the users more than anything else. But there's a couple of other ones I wanted to mention to the property team. For instance, a couple of other sites are your 30 Cromwell Road, 318 Gladstone Street. Those are the community groups who are using that, and they're happy to purchase those or happy to go forward with those. So please, you can work on those at a speed. I've had a community group from Ravensthorpe on Stafford Hall, who that community group are very keen to go forward with their lease and provide the same services to all the community groups. Is there anything you can add to that, or any progress on that, Simon? Felicity.
Sorry. In relation to Stafford Hall, yes, we are underway with the lease and that, and we recently had a condition survey to outline the works that need to be undertaken prior to the property being opened. So we've just got to bottom those out, and then we can get the lease to be completed.
Thank you. So has the condition survey been passed on to them to carry out the work, or?
I'll check with my colleague to see if the completed surveys come back yet.
Okay, thank you. Right, that was well discussed. Sorry, Adisa, did you want to come in, or no? Mm-hmm.
Just to clarify, because obviously the amendment, the recommendations as drafted, there have been some discussions about some slight tweaks to those recommendations. So in respect of the I Community Centre at the moment, as it's currently drafted, just references further work to be done, and I just wonder whether it might be, in light of what you've referenced, it might be an idea to include wording to the effect of officers to undergo further research or into grant opportunities. So that's reflected within the recommendation itself. Because at the moment it just references further work to be done, and I think that directly addresses the petition point which you've just discussed before. And the second point was just there seems to be a slight typo in recommendation 1. So it references noting the localities asset review. And before the word recommendations, it should be to approve the recommendations. So rather than note them, you're approving them.
Yeah.
So, those are the only 2
Thank
points.
you. Thank you. That's very much. Colin, have you noted that? Thank you. So we'll tweak those 2 items. One typo and one will particularly highlight, Dale, the grant side of it as well. So,
Yeah. So if you're minded to go with that, then we'll just need to propose an amendments to the recommendations to reflect those changes and vote on those.
So first, shall we propose on that? So those 2 small changes to recommendations before I read the recommendations. Do I have a proposer for that? Councillor Elsey, seconder. Councillor Hiller. So those 2 changes, we have those recommendations. Okay, so if there's no further questions, I'll go on to the recommendations. It is recommended that Cabinet notes the localities assets review initial findings and approve recommendations for each of the sites highlighted in Phase 1 as shown in Appendix 1 and provides any comments. Recommendation 2 agrees that sites deemed suitable as being surplus to requirements up to a maximum disposal price of £500,000, authority will be delegated to the Executive Director of Corporate Services in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Governance to take all necessary steps to implement effect the disposal. Recommendation 3 agrees that where any proposed sale or repurposing of an asset is at a price in excess of 500k, the decision to proceed will be brought back to Cabinet or specific approval to dispose on a case-by-case basis. Recommendation 4 notes that directors will continue to provide regular quarterly update to Cabinet on the progress of these sites. Recommendation 5 notes the proposal to focus on the Council's education sites under Phase 2, where officers will work with academies and maintain schools to investigate opportunities to improve community usage across buildings, to repurpose surplus properties, and to divest of surplus land if deemed appropriate. The expectation is that a report on Phase 2 will be brought back to Growth, Resources and Community Scrutiny Committee in the summer. And then one highlighted by the legal officer that where against I Youth Centre, we mentioned the grant funding. Do we agree with all those recommendations? Agreed? Thank you. Councillor Sanford, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, could I just ask about the additional recommendations that were suggested about, specifically in respect of the Walton Community Centre, about the recommendation from the committee? I'm still slightly disturbed that a recommendation of a scrutiny committee doesn't appear in the report to the Cabinet, but could that be included? And the other question that I had was, I'm slightly concerned that how do we know which of these community centres is worth more than 500,000? So if you're saying that anything that's under 500,000, it can basically be sold off without any further reference to the
Sorry, Councillor. This was agreed previously that most of these items, I think your group leader was involved in as well, that it'll come back to the Cabinet. So that's part of it. So all the decisions are coming back to the Cabinet.
So how do we know which are worth under 500,000 and which ones aren't?
Yeah, in consultation with Cabinet Member for all of them, and if it's in excess of 500k, then it'll come to the Cabinet.
Can I just for clarity, read out the recommendation from the Growth, Resources and Community Scrutiny Committee, recommended to Cabinet that they ask for a commitment from the Thomas Deacon Education Trust to provide community out-of-hours provisions at the Walton Community Centre should they purchase the site.
Can I just suggest on this one, there are some specifics which the report clearly says there's going to be further work on some of the outstanding assets. We can pick up the specific comments that Councillor Sanford's raised in those further reports, and we're giving monthly, I think, updates, and we're going to bring a quarterly update into Cabinet, so we can pick up those comments as we see fit, if that's giving you reassurance. I think there's loads of transparency, scrutiny. The administration's worked hard on this, and we're giving as much information as possible in the Cabinet system as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Right. If that item wasn't lively enough, we move on to the budget, item 9. Budget 2024-2025 and medium-term financial strategy 2024 to 2027. Members should also refer to supplementary papers attached. Councillor Howard, would you like to present it, please?
Thank you, Leader. And yeah, two very significant papers back together, aren't they? Thank you, Leader. It feels like we are now in the final leg of the journey for this year, which today enables me to present you the final proposed budget for 2024-25 and the medium-term financial strategy. As expressed at the meeting of joint scrutiny committees, I can't say often enough, I want to share my appreciation and thanks to officers and the corporate leadership team who have worked incredibly hard over the past year to develop plans to get us to this point. And I'd also like to extend this to members from all parties, particularly those who are part of the Financial Sustainability Working Group. And as you all know, the financial challenges for all councils has continued this year and has been very well documented in the media. With the sustained higher rates of inflation, we have seen the cost of delivering services rise. Energy prices increase, and of course, we are still managing high demand for services, particularly within children's and housing. A key area of focus for the budget has been managing inflationary pressures and keeping a tight control over spending. Preventative measures and early intervention have also been a focus to help manage the demand for services. But there is a stronger emphasis and focus on service transformation and economic growth. And in the coming years, we will be investing in children's services to be able to meet the rise in demand and improve the services that we offer children and families, particularly important and a key priority for us following our recent Ofsted inspection. We are also developing a social work academy to support the recruitment and retention of social workers. We are developing a shared life scheme. We are insourcing Serco services, which will unlock transformational potential as well. And we're still supporting the city to become net zero. And we are bringing forward really exciting development plans for several sites across the city, including the Station Quarter, the former TK Maxx building, and Middle Home. And you may have seen the prospectus that was launched last week showcasing these. And we will continue to review and ensure we're maximising the return from our assets. The budget includes a 4.99% increase in council tax, which is in line with the expectations set out in the local government finance settlement. For most households in Peterborough, that means an increase of £1.18 per week. This isn't a decision we take lightly, of course, but we cannot deliver a balanced budget and continue to provide the essential services that people want and need without doing so. And the local finance government settlement was announced at the beginning of last week. This confirmed our grant allocations and also included a little bit of good news. Nationally, a further 500 million has been made available for social care, and the council is expecting to receive just over £1.6 million, which of course is really well. A moderate level of risk. The robustness statement outlined in Appendix B sets these risks out in more detail, but unsurprisingly, these are driven by rates of inflation, rising levels of demand and complexity of need, uncertainty around future government funding, and the greater resilience that's being placed on local taxation. More crucially, the need to deliver the savings and transformation programme that we've set out for next year. And an additional note, if I may, is just to say there has been much talk about the Newark Hall Academy crossing provision, and I'm really thankful to Councillor Jones and Councillor Cole, who will be using their CLF to support the continuing provision of a crossing patrol. And this will allow the administration time to continue to work on a longer term solution for Newark Hill. So just to add, because that was through discussions today, and I'm very thankful for them to having those conversations with us. And with that brief introduction, I'll be grateful for your agreement to recommend this to full council on the 21st of February, by which point hopefully I'll have more of a voice than I have today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Howard, and thank you, the finance team. I understand how much work has gone into it, and it basically encapsulates every single activity what council does into that. Cabinet, do we have any questions? Any questions? I suppose we've gone through this very well, haven't we? We've gone through with Financial Sustainability Working Group, all-party scrutiny, a number of things. In fact, I invited some of the councillors this afternoon. Says, is there anything you would like to iron out? And you're absolutely right, Councillor Howard. Congratulations to Councillor Dennis Jones and Councillor Katie Coles for saving their local lollipop lady. And we've said that in the long term, if there's a crossing required or anything, modification required outside their roads, we'll work with them. And in fact, council has been very hard working with all the primary schools and trying to pedestrianise them or giving them options to have where there's no traffic, particularly at school times. That's it. I've just got one quick question on Appendix C, page 259, where we talk about, I think it's more on the capital side, where the debt level, it says, is 500 million. And repayment and borrowing is around 33 million. Now, as a small unitary authority, I thought that was a little bit too high, because I always assumed that Peterborough is almost on par with one of the London boroughs, you know, it's as small as that. But is that something in line with other authorities, or is that a little bit too much, too less? I mean, I know it's a difficult question to put yourself, because every authority is in a unique position. Is that somebody can answer? No, I think Cecilia Booth is probably going to come in.
Thank you, Leader. Our level of debt is relatively high not compared to other similar authorities, because we shouldn't try to compare really. It's reflective of the amount of money that's been invested into economic growth in Peterborough. In some areas, economic growth is not an issue. So we shouldn't really compare, but it is high, and in our capital strategy it is a high priority to use capital receipts to reduce our physical borrowing, and that will reduce the revenue cost as well, so that going forward we should be reducing debt.
Thank you. It's just that the 33 million repayment, you know, it's like any family when they get a big mortgage payout going out, and you say, that's really big. Is there any way I could reduce that? And this is a huge 33 million, which is almost equivalent to one of the departments, like Children's Services used to be not long ago low as that. I mean, now obviously they're quite high, now 59, but yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for a good answer there. Any other questions? Well, that was... Do I read all 15 recommendations?
Do you want me to give you a comment?
Yes, if you should.
Thank you, Leader. Just to emphasise the pleasing comments from Councillor Howard in terms of the progress in this. If you reflect back on the last 2 years, there's been huge strides around the financial resilience, huge amount of cross-party work on this. The position is miles stronger than we were a few years back, just to put it in perspective. So the comment around levels of debt, resilience, etc. He's been a real collective effort across the whole organisation, not just finance, but to be fair, the team have really stepped up. We brought in new skills. The finance team have been fantastic. But there are still further challenges, as you can see from the medium-term financial outlook. But we are making really good progress on that. There are lots and lots of councils across the country struggling with this. We're not complacent. And I would also emphasise the refreshing nature around how the council has engaged with the public around some of this, around the budget consultation, the simulator. You know, other councils are learning from our best practice on that. It's really good to get that engagement. So more than happy for this report to be recommended now to full council. There's been a load of debate, briefings for all councillors on numerous occasions. And I think, if I'm honest, people, I've seen this loads of times. So I think we're in a position to move it forward now, which is really pleasing. So just a massive thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to you, Matt, and not just to the finance team, but all the other directorates as well for working so hard. Right, now we come to recommendations. So there's quite a few, so bear with me, please. Recommendation 1, the medium-term financial strategy 2024 to 2027 outlined in Appendix A, which includes the key financial assumptions, strategic direction and estimated budget gaps in future years. Recommendation 2, the budget for 2024-2025 outlined in Appendix B, which includes A, funding and council tax summary, which includes a proposed council tax increase of 4.99% in 2024-25, 25-26 and 26-27. B, detailed revenue budgets and proposal details. C, the capital budget programme. And D, Section 25 robustness statement. Recommendation 3, the feedback from the budget consultation summarised in Section 4 of this report and outlined in Appendix C, along with the Council's response, which is outlined in Appendix O. Recommendation 4, the reserves commitments outlined in Section 2 of the budget report and the draft reserve strategy and policy outlined in Appendix D, which sets out the future direction of travel and planned use of reserves. Recommendation 5, the Treasury management strategy outlined in Appendix E, which has the fundamental roles of managing external investments, ensure debt is prudent and economic, outlining the prudential indicators and ensuring that decisions comply with regulations. Recommendation 6, the draft capital and investment strategy outlined in Appendix F, which manages its assets and investment resources to help achieve the strategic priorities of the Council. Recommendation 7, the outline asset management plan, AMP, as set out in Appendix G, which sets out principles for managing the Council's assets in the most efficient and effective manner and the direction of travel for future years while a more detailed and refreshed AMP is developed. Recommendation 8, the newly introduced sales fees and charges policy as outlined in Appendix H and the full sales fees and charges schedule for 2024-25 as outlined in Appendix I. Recommendation 9, the dedicated schools grant and the schools budget 2024-25 as set out in Appendix J. Recommendation 10, the Council Tax Resolution for 2024, setting out the Council Tax requirement and precepts, including those from the Parish Councils, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Cambridgeshire, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Fire Authority, and Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, is outlined in Appendix K. Recommendation 11, to increase the level of council tax premiums in line with Section 2.5. Recommendation 12, the budget Vermont rules outlined in Appendix L, which sets out the financial approval limits for transferring budgets between different cost codes and directorates. Recommendation 13, the equality impact assessments outlined in Appendix M, which have been completed for all major budget proposals. Recommendation 14, the carbon impact assessments outlined in Appendix N, which have been completed for all major budget proposals. And finally, Recommendation 15, the discretionary rate relief scheme as referred to in Section 2.6 and is outlined in Appendix P. So do we agree with all 15 recommendations, Cabinet? Agreed? Thank you. So that's agreed. Monitoring items now. Item 10, Budget Control Report 2023 Quarter 3. Councillor Howard, would you like to present that, please?
Thank you, Leader, and through you. This report sets out the Council's current year financial position, which compares how we are forecasting against the budget we approved at Council last February, alongside other measures of financial performance. We are now projecting a 2.1 million overspend at the end of Quarter 3. And if you recall, the Quarter 2 position I brought you in November last year, we were projecting a 6.4 million overspend. Officers and the corporate leadership team have made huge strides to improve the position and as a result to protect our reserves balance. I understand everyone is still working incredibly hard to bring this down as far as possible by the end of the year, but the hard work and results so far are really to be commended. you can see it has been a real team and organisational effort. That said, there are still those underlying pressures within the position, and these remain largely isolated to a few key areas, which include a sharp rise in complexity of need and demand for children's social care placements, an increase in the number of home-to-school transport routes, and a rise in the number of individuals and families requiring support with housing, particularly with temporary accommodation. We're also still managing a number of budgetary risks, as outlined in section 4.4 of the report. Most of these are demand-driven or a result of the continued high rates of inflation. Mitigation plans have been developed and are being implemented, aiming to reduce these. And as you can see from this section, positive progress has been made, and some of those risks previously deemed high have now been down-rated to amber. Our savings programme is progressing in the right direction, with a fraction of a percentage shown as high risk and now only 8% as amber. At this stage, I'm very confident this will be delivered by the end of the year. With that brief summary, I'm therefore happy to recommend that Cabinet notes the recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Do we have any questions, Cabinet, on that budgetary control position? No? No questions. In which case, we could go to recommendations. It is recommended that Cabinet notes the budgetary control position for 2023-24 as at 31st December 2023, which outlines a forecast overspent of 2.1 million. Recommendation 2, the key variance analysis and explanations are contained in section 4.2 and Appendix A to the report. Recommendation 3, the Council's capital programme performance as outlined in section 4.6. And final recommendation 4, the Council performance with respect to business rates and NDR and Council tax collection as outlined with Appendix B to the report. Do we agree to those recommendations? Thank you. Item 11, Peterborough City Council's response to the 4th Independent Improvement and Assurance Panel report. Do we have any questions on that? I suppose we've gone through that in the council in here, haven't we? So that's just to note, really. If there's no questions, I'll do the recommendation. It is recommended that the Cabinet considers the 4th report of the Independent Improvement and Assurance Panel and agree with the action to be taken as a result. Recommendation 2, endorse the report, Peterborough City Council respond to it, and the progress being made with the delivery of the improvement plan. Do we agree with that, those recommendations? Thank you. And that is end of the meeting. Thank you very much, Cabinet. Thank you very much, officers.